What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video today, and in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the NG Models May 2025 releases. So this May announcement, as we move into summer, I think this will be yet another crucial set for NG to see what their direction is like as we move through the rest of 2025 here. And so far, at least for those outside of the US in 1 to 400 scale, or actually inside the US and really anywhere else but Asia, it doesn't seem like it's going to be the best set this time around. So we have 3 A321s, 1 A330-200, 3 A350-900s, 1 A350-1000, 3 747-400s, so we're finally seeing that mold debut for a standard NG release and not a light. And then 1 AVIC Y20, so that's the same as the Sean Y20 that we've seen in previous releases. And then up in 1 to 200 and 1 to 240 scale, we have 2 737-700s, 2 738s, 2 739s, 2 MAX 10s, a total of 5 757-200s. A majority of them look like they're going to be military. 1 AVIC AG600, that's that amphibian aircraft. 1 Comac C909, and then in 1 to 240, there will be 1 Comac C919. So a very interesting set of releases here, just looking off of the hints. All right, so we've got the NG website pulled up, and I'm going to keep doing the screen recording thing, though I have observed some weird glitches where the screen recording freezes for a few seconds, especially if I'm transitioning from one object to the next. So if there's any glitches in this, just let me know. I'll try to make sure that there isn't any while I'm editing and after I get this video exported. It seems like the glitches, they don't show up when I'm editing, but when I export it, that's when the glitches show up. So let's go ahead and get started. In our first release, yep, this is the one that I was thinking was going to be done. This is the Blue Unity JetBlue A321. Look at that. Very good choice right here from NG, and will definitely be a release I'll pick up later on, especially once I get to spotting this aircraft, because I imagine it's only going to be not going to be very long before that happens. And the next few releases on screen, there's an Asiana A321neo. This one has the cockpit mask, which is what has been standard for Asiana as far as I know. And then there is a second release, though this one is a revised livery after the merger with Korean Air. So you'll note that the little titles in the beige there, not really beige, kind of like a, it's kind of hard for me to describe that color. It's like a light pink, I guess. They've removed the titles from there. It's the Kumo Asiana group, so those titles are now gone. And then coming up, we have a Korean Air A350-900. This one in the standard old livery. That was the first one for them, and then the second A350 there as well. Moving down, we have a Sichuan Panda Route A350, so this is like the umpteenth time that they've done it, but from what I understand, this is the last one that they have to do, so thankfully, we'll be able to move on to some other variety instead. And then a second release of this, but this one is just the standard release and no Ultimate Collection here. And then there's a China Eastern A350. This is the first one delivered from China. So first one that they built, I guess, within China, to my understanding there. Second, China Eastern as well, different registration. And then here are the 747-400s. We have the Air China example, Bravo-2447. Now, I know one of them is used for VIP transport. I'm not sure which registration it is, but I think it's one of these probably. And there's a second one with a different registration. And then we have a Y20 here. This is yet another, this is an NG Lite, very interesting. So they're just going to remove a lot of details and release it like that. Now we move into our 1 to 200s. We do have a United 739 in here, very cool. Eva Blue livery and all that, so that'll be a fun release. And then there is a second one. This is just the sister ship to 38459, which is 38458. KLM 739, this is with the Sky Team livery and a blue nose cone, so part of the new livery there, bleeding in there on the nose cone. And then this one is the standard Sky Team, though it does have a slightly different nose cone still, but very close to the actual livery. And then a MAX 10 prototype livery in here for 1 to 200. There is a second one as well with the sister ship registration 27752. And then here is the AG600M. I'm not sure how many different liveries there are on this type, but I guess there is enough to do multiple releases here. So there is that one. Bravo-0H Hotel Echo Hotel, so I guess. And then there is another AG600M. This one is a PLA Air Force livery, I believe. So a low vis there. Very interesting. And then a second one as well. This one is a lighter gray. And then here is a Comac Express ARJ21, or now C909, as they've rebranded that aircraft. And then an Air China C919, which is a golden fuselage. Okay, so we're really going to bleed into golden fuselages again. To be blunt, I hate when manufacturers make golden fuselages of anything. It looks ridiculous, it looks stupid, and nobody should really be making that, so we'll move on. And then there is there's another one, China Eastern. So this one's all golden because the whole fuselage is white, so, I've already stated my opinion on that, and you don't need to hear it again. And then another Air China 744. This is a farewell flight, September 2024. Now, I think they announced this a while ago, but they just haven't released it officially until now. So that one's been floating around from what I have seen. And then there's another one as well. Ultimate Collection, looks like. And that looks to be the entire release set. And just jumping in real quick, because there are some extra releases that were not mentioned on the NG website. This has happened more often than not recently. So China Southern A318, there's training-only titles. And then a couple of Cathay Pacific A350s, the first A350, and then a special flight for the 100th anniversary of Hong Kong's Kai Tak Airport. And there's another CA CMD-82 and a China Southern in there, it looks like. So at least there's a good thing that we do have some MD-80s in there. And then down in 1 to 200, there's a couple Xiamen 752s, one with old colors, two with new colors. And that looks to be everything other than this cartoon, Comac C919, which they've done a few of those, and I haven't really mentioned them just because they never put them on the NG website. So common occurrence for them to have one release list, and then there's a second one that I find which has like half a dozen more offerings that I didn't cover. So just wanted to make sure I got everything in this release, but now we can move on to my thoughts based on at least the ones that I saw on the website. So if that does happen, we get to August, September, and they're still doing these types of releases, then I think it would be a pretty safe bet to say that they have really switched their focus. But I have heard this for a long time, that that's what they really want to do in the long term. So if this just so happens that the tariffs line up at a perfect time to where they are making the shift, then, it is what it is. But it would be really unfortunate to see that they would make that shift, because I understand as well that within China, there is a lot of pushback with NG just because they are a newer manufacturer. They prefer a lot more of the established manufacturers as opposed to the new kids on the block. So NG is still fairly new compared to the established ones like Phoenix, JC Wings, etc. And yeah, they don't really like NG, but it seems like that they are trying their best to cater to these collectors to try and sway their opinions, which, that's great. But I just want to see if that has changed in the time since I've heard that, because it has been at least a few months now. So there we go. NG for May of 2025. 1 to 400 section is kind of bland, to be honest. The Korean A350 is nice, but they have already announced this before. And there's also going to be the new livery that'll pop up as well. So it may not be the most relevant choice for collectors these days. I will say the JetBlue Blue Unity is nice for U.S. collectors, but outside of that, there isn't really much for me to talk about in 1 to 400, just because most of it's all Chinese aircraft. Now, it would be fun to assess on just what the actual balance is between Chinese aircraft and aircraft from other regions, like Europe, North America, etc., and see how that has balanced out over the years, to see if NG really has shifted to a more focus on Chinese aircraft as opposed to getting a good representation from the rest of the world. So that will be something I will have to explore in the future. And then looking at the 1 to 200, better set. There's at least some variety in there. The European offering with the KLM United in there for our US friends, and then also the MAX 10 prototype liveries for those that are interested. And I will say the Air China 744, the farewell flight, I do like those types of models, so that one would be of my interest if I did poke into that realm of collecting a little more, but I don't really do that, so I try my best to be a little more balanced with opinions and whatnot, but yeah, it does kind of get annoying when you don't really get that much representation from other regions. Now, with Gemini jets, I know they do a lot of U.S. planes, but I feel like they try their best to get other representations in there, despite the smaller releases that they typically do. They'll try to get one from each region, like Europe and all that. They'll try their best, but sometimes it doesn't work out all the time. But with NG, I feel like it has been pretty consistent when it comes to not really getting a balanced representation of different regions. Now, I get that they can't do that every single release, but it feels like that they're kind of, they're really slipping into a realm of where they're really just going to focus on Chinese aircraft. And I had mentioned in the unboxing video yesterday that the whole situation with the tariffs, they may really shift to a more Chinese focus, or really just inside Asia, to where they won't really be affected by the tariffs. So if they do that, that's going to be a really unfortunate blow to a lot of U.S. collectors, because there are many, many, many options here in the U.S. that would be awesome to see released from NG. And I know many collectors have held off on buying from other manufacturers like Gemini jets just for this reason. So if they do actually go through with this within a few months' time, I need a bigger sample size from this point forward to see if they're really going to shift from their previous approach to something a little more, Chinese focused. So if that does happen, we get to August, September, and they're still doing these types of releases, then I think it would be a pretty safe bet to say that they have really switched their focus. But I have heard this for a long time, that that's what they really want to do in the long term. So if this just so happens that the tariffs line up at a perfect time to where they are making the shift, then, it is what it is. But it would be really unfortunate to see that they would make that shift, because I understand as well that within China, there is a lot of pushback with NG just because they are a newer manufacturer. They prefer a lot more of the established manufacturers as opposed to the new kids on the block. So NG is still fairly new compared to the established ones like Phoenix, JC Wings, etc. And yeah, they don't really like NG, but it seems like that they are trying their best to cater to these collectors to try and sway their opinions, which, that's great. But I just want to see if that has changed in the time since I've heard that, because it has been at least a few months now since I last heard about that. So I don't know if that opinion has swayed anymore, so I will have to look into that in the future. But overall, just, not the greatest release that I have covered from NG. The only pick of interest would be that JetBlue 321. Partially, this release is partially saved by that, but this release would have also benefited from having a European release in there, because, it's not only U.S. collectors that are lacking from NG lately. It feels like European collectors are getting left out. Now, the last release, for instance, was a little more balanced. We had, Etihad, Jetstar, A320neos, Aeromexico, Icelandair, United. We had a lot more representation. Turkish Airlines even. There was Turkish Airlines, there was Delta, there was a little bit of everything in that last release. And that's what made the April release a little better. But this May one here is only just, one American, and the rest of it is all, aircraft from China. And then one of 200, I would say, is a little more balanced, but maybe still a little more in favor of Chinese aircraft, which is better, but obviously not exactly preferred for those outside of that region, since most of my viewers, I would imagine, are from that area. So that's really all I'll say for the NG May releases. Just not the greatest, but I will plan on getting the Blue Unity A321 from JetBlue whenever I get a chance, either to spot it, or if just a good opportunity arises to pick that one up, then that will certainly be within my plans. With that being said, that is the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.